Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. And today we're going to be previewing Monday's match between Sunderland and West Brom at the Stadium of Light. So to find out more about the Baggies, we're joined by Lewis Cox from the Express and Star. Lewis, how's things?
Very good, Joe. How are you?
Yeah.
Very much looking forward to the trip up, actually, because it's been a long old 4 weeks without a match for us. I know you were treated to one, weren't you? So, yeah, it's been a long time coming and a lot of column inches to fill with precious little going on. So, can't wait, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have it back. We obviously got the game last weekend. Sunderland played Millwall at home, won that match 3-0. But for West Brom, it's been 4 weeks without a game, won't it? So returning to action this weekend at the Stadium Light. It is on Monday as well, after being chose to be shown on Sky Sports. So, as we said, West Brom 4 weeks without a game. They did have a friendly match though against Spanish side Elche. Tony Mowbray was saying this morning in his press conference. So, how did that go, and how have they kind of been managing the break?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they had a week away in Eastern Spain and managed to get a friendly out there. Result is not particularly important in those kind of warm-up games abroad, is it? Sorry. And they lost 1-0 to the La Liga team. No disgrace, obviously top flight over there. So, but most importantly, they got minutes in the legs. I think every squad player other than perhaps one got 45 minutes in the legs, which is particularly useful when it's been a month without a game, obviously. And I expect to see a good Albion side up there. I've got to say, we'll get onto it, but they were absolutely flying before the break, Joe. 3 wins on the spin, and all with clean sheets as well under the new head coach Carlos Corberán. So it was a massive run for them just before the pause. And to be honest, you could argue they could have done without the break for the World Cup, just because they were finally hit form, found some momentum that they hadn't had for so long. So maybe the break came at a difficult time. On the flip side, Corberán had only been in for about a month, and not having a preseason himself, I'm sure this break, and particularly the time out in Spain, we haven't spoke to him yet. We've got the chance tomorrow at the press conference, but I know he's relishing that opportunity to just work his players, get ideas into them better, practice tactical ideas and understandings on them, more in depth, things like that. So yeah, I expect to see Albion in good spirits, but I think like when you start a season or you've had a long break from a game, you can never quite know, can you, how a team's going to start up again. It necessarily doesn't matter that they were in really good form before the break. It obviously depends perhaps what they were doing in the break, but then what frame of mind, what type of, how the players are feeling physically going into a first match in a long old time. So yeah, an interesting one. But as I say, Albion sort of finally found their groove really before the break, because as you'll have seen, it had been a horrific start to the season. Obviously, mostly under Steve Bruce, someone well known up there, of course. And yeah, it hadn't gone well, and he was relieved of his duties. And but yeah, we definitely seen the upturn in fortunes, in form before the break, and Corberán was certainly having his impact.
Yeah, you mentioned Steve Bruce there, and obviously it has been a tough start to the season. West Brom still sitting 21st ahead of this game, but from the outside looking in, it always looked like West Brom had a good kind of group of players there, but Bruce just didn't seem like the right fit. Is that kind of the feeling that it was there?
Yeah, so he hadn't been at the club long at all. February, March time, back end of last season, and it didn't start particularly well. Levelled a bit towards the end and got a couple of results, but Albion were nowhere. They were mid-table. They finished 10th in the Championship, which is below par, below expectations, really. And obviously Bruce goes into his first summer this year, looking to really change the way the team was playing, have a real change of the squad, style, everything like that. Like last season, they were defensively solid, but not scoring at all. There were tons of 0-0s, and it was getting them nowhere. So I wanted to flip it really and get on the front foot, get attacking, bring a bit more enthusiasm and sort of vibrancy to the way the team attacked, things like that, and got some good players in, as you say. I mean, the obvious ones are your Jed Wallace's, and you look at John Swift as well from Reading. They got Okay Yekuzlu back to the club, a Turkish international midfielder they'd formerly had on loan in the Premier League. But the start couldn't have been much worse, unfortunately. Results went against them. They got one win, I think maybe 4 or 5 league games in, and then it was totally barren. too many draws. They were drawing a lot of games early on, making terrible defensive mistakes. Easily scored against. Really easily scored against. Had some okay points on the road. Don't get me wrong, but it was going on and on. It went on and on a while, and I see a lot of noise from frustrated supporters with Albion. Probably by that point, midway down the bottom half, really closer to the bottom three, really, than where they should be, where they want to be, fighting to be in the playoffs at least. And it felt like it was coming. And I suppose the thing that perhaps kept Steve Bruce in his post for a little while is because he was still new into the job, really. He hadn't been there a very long time at all. It was a new group, a new style, trying to find a new way. But it just didn't look like it was producing. They were unfortunate in spells, but kept shooting themselves in the foot time and time again. Players were clearly losing confidence and struggling to put in winning performances. You can see the mentality and, let's say, confidence was drained. They sort of looked on the floor, really. And enough point of the season has gone, I think, into October, and you're looking at the table and thinking, you really need to make a change to try and salvage this, because it's an important season for Albion, really important to try to be in the mix to try and go back up. When you factor in parachute payments from the Premier League and trying to use those to your advantage to get back up there, obviously, is a really important season, and they couldn't let it drift any further because Albion were nowhere, and as I say, much closer to the foot of the table than promotion spots, certainly when it comes to position. So they had to make a change. And it was quite a while, really. I think probably 3 weeks plus, maybe, without while the search went on. Had a caretaker in from the club's academy, and it was quite quickly apparent that Corberan was of interest. Former Huddersfield head coach, of course, who worked wonders at Huddersfield, didn't he? Really getting into that playoff final, and then obviously left for a great job in Greece, or a massive club in Olympiakos in the summer, and that didn't last very long for him at all. Dozen games or so, and he was relieved of his duties there. And thankfully, I suppose from Albion and Corberan's point of view, the timing was perfect, and they were able to make that work. And he's been very impressive so far. The impression he's given, the way he handles himself, the way he goes about his work, and the way he communicates, it's been pretty impressive to watch, and certainly delivered results. Because, I say, 3 wins on the bounce. Didn't look like it was coming, really, prior to his arrival, and certainly with clean sheets, that has been a million miles away. So, massive improvement, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly looks like he's made a positive impression. I imagine he's been quite a popular appointment with supporters as well. There's probably maybe a bit more of a feel-good factor around the club going into this game now.
Yeah. They've taken to him quite quickly. He actually lost his first game in charge, which was a home game against Sheffield United. So quite a tough one. I think the Blades are probably top at the time. I think I'm right in saying. Feels like a long time ago. He lost that one, but that was always a tough starter. And then followed it up in the second game with a midweek home against Blackpool. And Blackpool down the lower reaches, really. Not a fancied side for the division, you'd have to say. And they struck a late winner, I think, within the final 10 minutes of the game through Yakuslu. And it just felt like a massive moment. Felt like sort of lift off for the new regime, and it was a priceless win and a clean sheet, a very rare clean sheet to go alongside it. And before you know it, the Saturday after that, they're heading down to QPR, who were, going great guns, really. They'd had all the Beale stuff with the manager there. He was still in charge, and Albion go and get a 1-0 win on the road. And it looks like it's coming into shape. And they finished off after that by comfortably dispatching Stoke at home 2-0. Really confident, comfortable, professional. The best they've probably looked all season, in truth. When you look at the whole display, they just looked in the groove. They looked like they knew what they were doing. Players had confidence in them. Again, you could see that. And it felt like each player in each position in the formation, which we'll probably get onto, knew their roles, knew what they were doing. The response was quite clear. And from the supporters, as you say, they've really taken to him. They like the way he comes across. They like the things he's saying. I think they're seeing him someone who's done well from a difficult position recently with Huddersfield, where he took over and where he eventually got them to. someone who's clearly been there and done it in recent times. Obviously, Steve Bruce had been there and done it many a time, but obviously, I guess in Steve Bruce, you've got a manager who's, been around a long time and is at towards the end of his career, you'd say. And in Corberán, it's the other way, isn't it? It's a young head coach. Obviously, cut his teeth with Bielsa at Leeds, didn't he, before Huddersfield and Olympiacos, and he feels like he's maybe starting and got these, young, fresh ideas, approach. So I think the Albion fans are behind that. They like something. Just wanted something to get behind, really, something to cling to grasp to, maybe a bit of an identity, something like that. And yeah, they've been sort of chanting his name. They give it the Paella and Estrella chant, obviously with him being Spanish. So yeah, the mood's lifted, and the fan base needed it because it got pretty rough. Really, it got pretty. Apathy had very much kicked in, and crowds were dwindling at the Hawthorns as well, which is obviously a great place to watch football, but the crowds were staying away. And to tell you the truth, really, before the appointment and actually after the first game of Corberán's, which, as I say, was a defeat, which actually sent them bottom. They went second bottom under the caretaker, and they dropped to bottom. And during the stage of a caretaker manager, you're thinking and writing and reporting Albion in a relegation battle here, to drop to the third tier for the first time in sort of generations it feels unthinkable, really. It does. And with the squad that's there, it does. But obviously it's happened to many big clubs, hasn't it, falling down to the third tier? So you can never write it off. But at the moment, in the here and now, it's looking up and it's thinking, well, there's long enough in the season left, and the table's not as bad as it could be, and there's still a glimmer of hope, really. You can still have a good season and probably get onto the coattails of the playoffs.
Yeah, we seem to say this on every podcast that we do with different writers that, well, look at the table. West Brom are 21st. I think they're only 8 points off the plaffs, so that's a couple of wins over the Christmas and
a game in hand, isn't a game in hand over most rivals as well, I believe. So yeah, it certainly with the start they had, it could have been a hell of a lot worse, really.
You talked about the identity there, and that the fans are buying into that. Just looking at their kind of system and what they've been playing, it looks like a back four, maybe a 4-2-3-1. So what kind of can we expect from West Brom? What kind of is his style, and how are they setting up under him?
Well, we were wondering what to expect when it went into the first game, because one of the things we'd read about his Huddersfield time was not an absolute flurry of formations. He likes to flip between, there's not necessarily a set formation system. So that was interesting. And the first game, the defeat to Sheffield Wednesday, started and finished differently. Now, they started the game quite poorly and finished it well in a 4-2-3-1, and brought different personnel on to fit into that 4-2-3-1. And you're thinking, well, they've done okay there at the end of the game. They've pushed Sheffield United a little bit. And lo and behold, followed that up and stuck with a 4-2-3-1. And it's worked well, really. And I mean, ironically, we talked about players earlier, Jed Wallace, John Swift. Players like that were brought in to fit such a system, really. I mean, Wallace is obviously an out-and-out winger out on the right. Swift is a number 10, playing in the hole. And they've used Grady Diangana pretty much all season on the left of that. And it's been behind a front man. And they've struggled in that front man position, in all honesty. It's been a bit of a mixture. It was Carlin Grant, who not too long ago was a big money signing for the club, of course, playing that role. He was actually with Corberán at Huddersfield very, very briefly, but hadn't quite been working for Grant. They snapped up a lad from the fourth tier from League Two, Brandon Thomas Asante from Salford. Been a bit of a hit, really popular, scored a few goals, works hard. He's had it. And the big one, really, I suppose, over this break and where they've been unfortunate this season, Daryl Dike, the USA striker, has finally got over another awful muscle injury, which sidelined him pretty much from start of August to the World Cup break. So he comes into contention, and that's a big factor. That's a big centre forward for them, both in stature and profile, really. I mean, he should have a big impact. So that'll be interesting. As I say, it's been that 4-2-3-1. Considered style, I would say. The two central midfielders are busy, hardworking. You don't get not overly stylish, nothing too fancy. It's quite functional, I would say. We've seen the fullbacks on both sides attack. I would say, you know, we're not talking steady defensive fullbacks here. We're seeing them encouraged on to join in with the wingers on either side of the three. So that's been an interesting factor in it. And Swift's role, actually, John Swift's role in the number 10 has blossomed somewhat under Corberan, because he was a big signing, as I say, from Reading, and started okay, but levels really sort of started to dip. And Albion wanted and needed more from him in that role. He needed to be a creative force, a spark, and actually dropped out of the side a little bit, which you would never have envisaged at the start of the season, given reputation he arrived with and so on. But he's found his feet again under the new head coach, and a couple of goals have been from set pieces, which is interesting, because Albion had really suffered in that department, both conceding, but they used to be a side not necessarily full of giants, but a side who would really, you think of Albion in the Premier League, Pulis and whatever, you think of Olsen at the back, Macaulay, you know, these guys getting onto the end of Chris Brunt corners and free kicks, and it'd been lacking, really. It had been lacking, but of late, I mentioned that 1-0 win at QPR. Kyle Bartley, big centre half, arrives to score the winner. Yukuşlu's big winner in Corberan's first win was from a corner or a set piece out wide. So they finally found that, and Swift is behind that. He's over them, and that's been really important. And it's helpful and useful that, you say, players like Bartley in your team, you should be using them. Is a certain type of defender that should be clear in his lines at the back and being a threat in the other box. And that Stoke game just before the break, the 2-0 win, Bartley opened the scoring in that. And funnily enough, the second goal was a Brandon Thomas Asante absolute wonder goal, bicycle kick he scored. But Bartley, honestly, from centre half, from set pieces in the first half, could have had at least a hat trick. He got on the end of everything. Hit the bar with one, sent a couple wide. It was really, he should have had a few goals, but he got the one. And that's been an interesting facet that the new head coach has been able to bring back. And I'm not calling them a long ball or a set piece team. They're not, but it's been very useful addition. And still that element of width, as I say, the be it Wallace and Dean Garner or Matty Phillips, another experienced player of Albion's who's had a go out wide recently. They still use that. I'm just interested to see how the centre forward role will work now post the World Cup break, given, you know, DK's availability within the side. It surely means perhaps a change up top. And I'll be interested. And he's certainly a handful. I've seen him play a couple of times for the under-21s as he makes his way back, because he's barely played for the first team since arriving in January, and he's a big old unit. He's going to have some battles with some centre halves. So look forward to that. And it's another massive test. I mean, in terms of aways, he's had a few home games, Corberan, but he went down to QPR, and they got a superb 1-0 win. And this is another big test, isn't it? You know, a different type of test, but they'll want to, despite having the break, they'll want to continue the form of momentum. No doubt, 3 wins is great. If you can say 4 in a row, it gets even better, doesn't it? And Albion need to carry it on for their season. You know, they can't. What are they? A place and goal difference out of the bottom 3? They've clearly got a real massive load of work still to do. But I do think the players and a team in there to change the outlook of the table, really, to get closer to where the team should be and the club feels it needs to be as well.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a lot of players there, particularly Swift and Wallace. Are they kind of the key players that then Sunderland are going to have to look out for and to stop on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, Wallace was some way, obviously, summer arrival from Millwall. Sunderland fans will have seen him over the years play for a couple of sides, and to a certain point, up until maybe around Corberan's arrival, actually in late October, Wallace was by some way Albion's best player, really. So chief attacking outlet, biggest threat. He really led the charge, really, and not enough of us were keeping up with him. You almost felt like you needed 10 Wallaces out there almost. And but yeah, it's sort of leveled out just a little bit. He was quiet in a few games before the break, but I think that's just form and a little dip. I think I expect to see Wallace come back fit and firing after this break. I really do. Such a key player. Let's say Swift he's a nice player, isn't he? Stylish footballer, technician, keeps things ticking over, uses it well, and he's got a pass in him. But those set pieces have been priceless, as I say. So I would pick out those. And Grady Diangana, the other winger, has mostly been opposite Wallace this season on the other flank. He started the season like a house on fire. Diangana did it. Albion fans really felt like they'd recaptured the best of him, which had been lost for a year or so, in fairness, maybe longer. So that was a massive part. And that was one of the areas Steve Bruce really succeeded in getting Diangana going. Again, he dropped off a little bit, but they'll be hopeful to get more from him, really. Boosted in another department as well. I mean, I mentioned DK's return. They've got Shemi Ajayi, the centre-half, back from a long-term injury as well. And prior to his injury, end of August, start of September, he was Albion's top defender, really. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ajayi comes back into the side, whether he does come back into the side or has to buy his time. He was certainly a big player for them, massive player for them before his knock. And so the defence struggled without him, albeit eventually found its feet. So, yeah, I mean, the big picture is Albion coming out of this break off the back of great form at the end of the break, and with what you would say is two of their key players from the squad back to full fitness after long-term injuries. So there's a bit of optimism on that front, to hopefully continue where they left off, but with a bit more of a bolstered squad with some star names back. So that's the hope anyway from down this end. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it. There's lots of little links, and obviously Mowbray up there as well is really nice for Albion fans. And yeah, looking forward to it, Joe.
Well, that's the last thing I was going to ask about Tony Mowbray. Obviously, someone that was at the club 2006 to 2009. I think he was one promotion from the Championship. I think he's been back there with other clubs to West Brom, he was saying this morning. But how is he kind of viewed there at the Hawthorns, and what sort of reception would he get from the away fans, do you think?
Yeah, immensely popular, hugely popular. He'll get a brilliant reception. He will. We, funnily enough, actually, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. A couple of months ago, I think it might have been the first international break of the season, which is possibly September, was it? There was a charity game at Albion at the Hawthorns, and he'd just taken over at Sunderland, I think. He'd just taken over, but he'd already committed to being a manager in this charity game. Okay. It was a testimonial for Chris, a bit of an unofficial testimonial for Chris Brunt and James Morrison.
He's going to a dinner on Friday, I think it was, for Morrison and Brunt.
In the press conference
this morning.
This, as in Friday, as in tomorrow? Sorry.
Yeah, as in tomorrow, yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, he'd already committed to being a manager to that before taking a Sunderland job. And obviously that was announced, and he was busy there, as you can imagine, taking on a new job, but he still felt, the need to honour that commitment in the international break and come and be the manager on the charity game. And we had a bit of time with him afterwards where we asked him a few Albion questions and stuff like that. And I didn't cover the club at the time when he was around and had his success, but I know he's still revered, really, and he's got a huge passion for West Brom. I mean, it was such a big gig for him, wasn't it, coming down and getting his philosophy over the way he plays football, that fans still remember the football he bought, and obviously the success that came with that. Some players of great quality. He'll get brilliant reception. And obviously jobs since for him haven't been, it hasn't been full success, as it's been a bit of a mixed bag. He's had some tougher spells than others, but I always think it's great to see him doing well. And unless they're playing against Albion fans are always keep an eye out for him and hope for positive results. Really, it's he's a great guy and a top manager as well. And good to hear. So little meet up again tomorrow before the. Well,
yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Yeah, in the press conference this morning. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. I say hugely popular and still a bit of a still a connection to the club in terms of doing a charity game like that, and the fans will give him a great reception. Yeah, so that'll be nice too.
Yeah, just another little aspect to the game. Well, Lewis, we usually finish by just asking our guests for quick score prediction. How do you think the game's going to go on Monday night?
Oh yeah, can't say I thought about that too much. Yeah, I'll go a score draw. I'll say 1-1. I'll say 1-1. I think Albion can probably find something up there. But yeah, I quite like, certainly I haven't seen them yet, but on paper I quite like some of Sunderland's players. Yeah, I think it's got that feel about it. I don't think that'd be a terrible result for either side, actually.
Yeah, I kind of had 1-1 in my head. I think I was going to say that as well. I think
Yeah.
obviously West Brom have looked like they've turned a bit of a corner under Corbrand. Sunderland playing well as well with that win over Millwall. Got a few players back from injury now, so looks like it could be a tight game.
Yeah, Ross Stewart's on his way back, isn't he? I read.
Yeah, I think he could be on the bench. By the sound of it, I'd be surprised if he starts. But he played behind closed doors game this week against Middlesbrough, scored. It looks like he's could be back on the bench for that game. So maybe he comes off the bench. And Alice Sims is playing well as well, so scored 2 and 2. So
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Other than it being a Monday night and a hell of a trip for a Monday night, Albion fans are looking forward to going up there because obviously where Sunderland have been of late hasn't been a regular trip for a few years at least. So yeah, it'll be good, and yeah, looking forward to it. And I think it'll be a tight one. I think the fact we've both lent towards 1-1 there probably says a lot.
Yeah. Well, look forward to the game. Lewis, thanks a lot for coming on. And as ever, you can subscribe to the Sunderland Echo content for our premium content and ad-light experience over on our website. You can also head over there for the latest SAFC news. Tony Mowbray held his pre-match press conference on Thursday, so there's more build-up to the game as well as comments from the Sunderland head coach on there. Also, you can subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Just search Sunderland Echo SAFC on YouTube and press subscribe. You can find all our latest podcasts, fan videos, and press conference clips. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.